Welcome one and all to the gloomiest place on Earth. Ever wonder what a post-apocalyptic Disneyland might look like? Well, Epic Mickey gives us a pretty good idea of what it would be. A downtrodden, monster-filled wasteland where forgotten classic cartoon characters are dumped and your well-known classic Disney favorites are rusted and robotic. And the Phantom Blot has taken over and made things even worse for the residents of this wasteland. They need a hero, someone who can traverse and defy the stakes and can bring peace back to the residents who live here. Normally, that would have been Mickey. You know, with him being in the name of the game and everything. But this time, we're sending in another character who has dabbled in Disney before and even met Mickey Mouse, and that would be Sora. Just a quick spoiler warning, I will be going over all of Epic Mickey, and I'll also be talking about all of Kingdom Hearts. I'll also be mentioning other Kingdom Hearts games, not just the first one, so if you don't want to be spoiled at all, finish those games first and then come back later. The Sora I'll be throwing into this adventure will be the classic Kingdom Hearts 1 Sora, complete with magic and abilities from his first adventure. In case you're unfamiliar with Sora, he's the protagonist of the Kingdom Hearts franchise and has met both Square and Disney characters alike, with two of his closest companions being both Donald and Goofy. They fly to different Disney worlds, defeating the Disney villains and saving those worlds from many different enemies. Sora's signature weapon is the Keyblade, and if you're judging it based on the name, yes, it does exactly what you think it does. The Keyblade can unlock stuff just like a key, and it'll slice stuff just like a blade, so I would say the weapon is aptly named. Sora is also capable of using many magic spells that help him on his adventure, and also learns many amazing summon spells that let him bring out very famous Disney characters who can aid him in battle. However, despite having all those cool abilities, Sora's strength comes from the friendships and bonds he's gained throughout his journey, making him able to face the toughest of odds. But there's one thing Sora is going to be missing on this journey, and that's paint, which will make this adventure pretty tough, as Epic Mickey revolves around paint and thinner to overcome obstacles and help with platforming. Does Sora have what it takes to make it through without paint? Let's find out. Firstly, how does Sora even end up in the wasteland? Well, after waking up from his long slumber inside of Carbonite, Sora, Donald, and Goofy, and by the way, you do have to say those names in that order. Any other way is just blasphemous. They make their way to Yensid's tower, and once there, they arrive in the room, but nobody is there, and on the desk is something that looks like a small makeshift town. Sora was intrigued and hunched over the display. Donald yelled at him to respect Master Yensid's belongings, but Sora said he was just admiring it. As Sora peered closer, Donald tried to pull him back and the two fought. That's when they knocked the paint and thinner over and it covered the entire display. Donald and Goofy freaked out knowing what Yensid would do to them. They ran into the other room to look for something to clean it up with. Sora, on the other hand, was enamored with how the display started to glow. The paint reminded him of someone, but he couldn't remember who. That's when a phantom peered out and grabbed Sora. He had no time to react and it dragged him into the world below. Sora awoke not knowing where he was, but he was tied down by a mad doctor who wanted his heart. Sora just thought to himself, who isn't after my heart? Sora summoned his Keyblade and used a fire spell on the doctor, making him retreat. Sora also saw a small rabbit running around, but he escaped as well. Soon after, he was targeted by the giant robot. This robot I wouldn't even qualify as a boss. All you need to do is attack a few power stations and it stops operating. I mean, even Mickey is able to destroy it with just his spin attacks, so Sora should be able to break these things with just basic swings from the Keyblade. He then meets Gus, who tells him about the Wasteland and Oswald the rabbit. Oswald was essentially the keeper of the wasteland and made sure the residents who were forgotten could live happily. This was until the Great Thinner disaster that unleashed the Phantom Blot. Sora told Gus he would help save this world since that was kind of his whole thing. He also mentioned that he was able to remember some of his abilities that he didn't know he had. Gus told him that this was the land of the forgotten, so maybe just by him being here, it made him subconsciously remember his abilities. Next, they entered the park area as they saw Oswald leaving on a boat. Sora wanted to catch and talk to him. Now with Sora's abilities being returned, it makes some platforming elements easier for Sora than it was for Mickey on this adventure, since Sora now has access to high jump and glide. A lot of the paint is used to help Mickey turn gears to rotate platforms or fill in hovering platforms so Mickey can make it to the other side of something. With Glide, Sora wouldn't necessarily need any of those platforms to even be created with paint. As for doors, thinner is used around them to have the door just topple over by getting rid of its attached surroundings. Sora doesn't have access to thinner, but could use fire spells on the fragments attaching to the door to destroy them. Remember, Sora's fire spell was capable of destroying a large solid section of stone when he was in Agrabah. As for the main enemies Sora will fight along the way, they are called the Blotlings, and come in all shapes and sizes. Now, in Epic Mickey, you cannot kill these enemies permanently by just hitting them with physical hits. You either destroy them with thinner or redeem them and have them fight alongside you with paint. The Blotlings are creations of both paint and thinner, and so are susceptible to both. Now, I understand the Keyblade is a magical weapon and would most likely be able to destroy these enemies permanently with just physical hits, but if by chance it couldn't, Sora does still have an answer without the need for paint or thinner. Sora's got fire and ice. You see, depending on the type of paint used, if it was an oil-based paint and thinner, Sora could set them on fire and they would eventually die. If the paint and thinner aren't flammable, then Sora could simply freeze them in place, since they are still liquids that can be frozen. So Sora should be able to dispatch these enemies with little effort needed. As they chase after Oswald, Sora would run into Pete. Sora would tell Pete, "So you're behind putting me in here." Pete wouldn't understand what he meant, but wouldn't help out Sora either as he ran away. On the way, Sora would free some of the gremlins as Gus told him they were his friends and could help him out by making the platforming sections easier to navigate through. After that, Sora made it to the Colosseum, where he would need to battle a lot of Blotlings. After defeating both them and Pete, Sora and Gus would be gaining on Oswald, but would run into the first big boss, the Clock Tower. The Clock Tower is a giant mechanized tower that uses mostly physical attacks to deal damage, and sometimes summons attacks coming at you from the left and right. However, its most deadly attack is making you listen to "It's a Small World After All." You would normally defeat this thing by thinning out its arms, and when they attack Mickey and slam into the ground, they would break on impact since all the delicate parts are now exposed. And exposing yourself at Disneyland is definitely a no-no. Then eventually the head would fly off from the broken limbs. Since Sora doesn't have any thinner, he'll have to beat this thing the old-fashioned way. So there are a couple ways for Sora to win. The first is just by hacking away at its arms when Sora can get near them. He can also stop the arms from moving from using his, well, stop magic ability. The Keyblade has been shown to slice and dice very strong materials before, and even destroy metal parts. Even though this clip is from KH2 and we're using KH1 Sora, this is something the Keyblade has always been capable of, so we know it could cut through the metal if need be. The other option is for Sora to lock onto the clock tower's face and damage it with long-range spells. He has many spells that could do this that are available to him. Now with the clock tower out of the way, the chase can continue. Sora then entered Oztown where he met some of the residents. They told him Oswald was held up at the Mickey Junk Mountain. That's where Mickey Mouse does away with all the evidence, as well as fond childhood memories. Upon hearing that name though, Sora thought to himself, what does the king have to do with any of this? As Gus and Sora ventured on, they encountered Goofy. Well, kind of. Sora freaked out by saying, "What happened to you?" But Gus explained it wasn't the same Goofy Sora knew. This Goofy was just an animatronic Oswald made because he wanted friends. That hit Sora deep. If anybody knew hurt, it was Oswald. As Gus and Sora continued on to Mickey Junk Mountain, Sora had to defeat more vicious Blotlings on the way. And when they finally had made it to Oswald, Oswald explained that he blamed Mickey for people forgetting about him and that a special person he held dear seemed to favor Mickey over him. Sora simply looked at Oswald and told him if he needed a friend, he would be his friend, and promised to never forget him. Oswald didn't care and just wanted his world fixed, so he agreed to help Sora and Gus. Oswald told Sora there was a rocket they could use to get to the Phantom Blot, but they needed the parts for it, and the first was being held by Pete Tronic. That honestly sounds like an element on the periodic table. Sora agreed and he would get the parts and meet back with Oswald later. Now, Pete Tronic is another straightforward boss battle. As you can see, he's heavily Tron inspired and throws a disc to match, which can be deflected at him to do damage. He also throws Thinner, which is kind of like acid in this game, and also does a big jump that if you're standing on the ground when he lands, you're gonna fall flat on your ass. So Sora will have to time his jumps accordingly and dodge the acid. This shouldn't be an issue for Sora though because of his dodge roll ability. Even when Pete uses the wide thinner attacks, Sora could dodge roll out of it. And Sora could guard the spinning disc to reflect it back at Pete. Now Pete does have a tank on his back for paint and thinner. If you use paint, he'll befriend you. If you use thinner, well, not so much. In this case, since Sora has neither, he'll defeat Pete the old-fashioned way, by clobbering him. If push comes to shove, Sora could knock him into the thinner below, but it's not his style. I could see Sora somehow using the Keyblade's power to get rid of the darkness in Pete and make him nice again. Either way, in terms of combat ability and the fight itself, Sora wins this hands down. The next piece is being held with the pirates. When Sora gets there, he'll see Daisy, but he won't know who that is yet since they haven't met. He'll also see Smee and be confused as to why he's even here. Smee will tell Sora about how Hook has turned many of the crew into robots and that he has the part he was looking for. As per usual, after doing some favors and getting through some platforming areas, Sora will make it to Hook and Sora would say he looks a lot different than he remembered. For this battle, Sora could win 3 different ways: by freeing the sprite to have Pete Pan battle him, having the Croc eat him, or just by beating him up. Sora doesn't seek out the most violent route unless absolutely necessary. So he could just climb to the top and free the sprite. However, if Sora couldn't reach the sprite for some reason, he could defeat Hook by just realigning the path with smacking the cogs with his Keyblade until Hook slams into enough things and blows up. Hook's attacks are pretty by the numbers here as well, with just shooting thinner out of his pistol and using melee attacks if Sora ever gets in close. But Sora has proven how good a swordsman he is, so that wouldn't matter. Also, Sora could use Thunder instead of getting in close to mess with the circuits on Captain Hook, so he wouldn't even need to get close to him. After that, only one part would be left. Sora would need to confront the Mad Doctor again. Sora would have to platform his way around the ghost until he makes it to the gate of the castle, which he could just open himself with the Keyblade without any assistance. Before he left though, he'd see Robo-Donald and see he was still as angry as ever. Sora sarcastically told him not to be so mad or he'd short-circuit himself, which made Donald even angrier. After some stops through the castle and the library, Sora would make it to the Mad Doctor. Now, just like the other bosses, there are a couple ways to win, either to realign the train tracks or to destroy the Beetleworks replicators. Destroying the Beetleworks replicators is an easy option for Sora thanks to his Thunder spells and the Keyblade. He would easily be able to destroy them and not have to work anywhere near as hard as Mickey had to. Remember, Mickey was significantly weaker than Sora and didn't have access to much weaponry, and for offensive capabilities, all he had was his spinning attack. Sora being able to cut metal and destroy machines with Thunder would make this boss battle easy for him. With the Mad Doctor defeated, the last part would be his. Also, ever wondered what the witch from Snow White would look like on a robot? Well, there you go. You're welcome. Sora would then head to Mickey Junk Mountain again to meet Oswald, but would run into the Blot. Now, the Blot uses Thinner again for its main attacks and also tries to suck you into its mouth. It can also spawn Blotlings to attack you and has a Thinner beam that it can shoot. It will also lunge into the air and do a ground pound on you. Now, Sora doesn't have the paint or thinner that you would normally chuck into his mouth, but he does have his fire spells. If Sora were to use fire repeatedly and burn the Blot from the inside out, he would eventually vaporize it completely. Sora would just need to dodge roll all of his attacks, which dodge roll can do, and he can even duck under beam attacks. Eventually, the Blot would feel the heat and die. Sora would shake Oswald's hand, saying they were happy it was finally over, but Sora learned the real Blot was still inside the bottle being held in by the cork. And when Sora admitted all of this was caused by the fight between him and Donald, Oswald would get angry and accidentally unleash the real Blot. Now, with the Phantom Blot unleashed, Sora would have to backtrack to each section he had visited and rid those places of the Blot's roots by destroying the glowing orbs on each of the roots. After that task was done, Oswald, Sora, and Gus would head to the Blot's lair for the final battle. To defeat the Blot, Oswald had constructed enough firepower to completely destroy him. Sora would just need to activate them by using paint on the gargoyles to activate the beams that would power the crystals, and yeah. This is the first really big issue with having no paint. The beams needed to destroy the Blot have to be activated from the multiple gargoyles emitting power to the crystal in the center. Without the paint, no beams. And to top it off, there are multiple levels, so even if Sora used his key beam to power one of the crystals, it needs a constant stream of energy, and Sora can't be in multiple places at once, at least not yet. So Sora only had one option. Sora told the Blot to let everyone go, and in exchange, he could have his heart. That's when the Blot took Sora's heart away and then ate him. Sora was surprised though, he didn't turn into a Heartless this time. Now, just to explain, in the KH world, when you lose your heart, you become a Heartless. But when Mickey lost his heart in the Wastelands, that didn't happen, and since we stuck Sora in Epic Mickey, we're operating under those rules. Now with Sora inside, he could attack the roots of the Blot and free his heart. Just like before, Sora will have to dodge enemies and destroy them all while destroying the glowing orbs. If Sora decided to use Ragnarok here, it could come in really handy. He could destroy a lot of the orbs with multiple beams. This would speed up the process. As for the Blotlings, he would know how to handle them now. Now with the roots destroyed and his heart freed, it was finally over. The Phantom Blot had been defeated and the Wastelands were freed, and Oswald thanks Sora for his help. Sora was then transported out by Yensid and was given a stern talking to. So could Sora survive Epic Mickey? There is no doubt in my mind. Regardless of not having paint abilities, which are the crux of Epic Mickey, Sora packs enough spells and abilities to make platforming accomplishable and defeating enemies a breeze. He also has the added benefit of already encountering Disney villains and has an idea on how to defeat them. And honestly, if you look back at Kingdom Hearts, it actually has quite a few platforming areas, so this is nothing new for Sora. And when it comes to combat, nobody in the Wastelands comes even close to Sora's power. And let's not forget Sora's ability to make friends, so Sora could definitely turn many of the residents into his allies, as well as enemies, making him achieve much more for the Wastelands than just defeating the Blot. But what do you think? Do you think Sora's lack of paint and thinner would hinder him too much to make it through? Let me know what you think about this scenario. All I know is, I kind of want the Wastelands and Oswald in Kingdom Hearts games now. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the video and I hope you enjoyed it. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already and look forward to more videos. Thanks again for watching and I hope everyone's having a happy October. See you soon.